Nothing in this podcast or on our website should be construed as medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for your individual nutritional and medical needs. The information presented is based on our research and is strictly that of the author and not necessarily those of any professional group or other individual.
Hi, I'm Sue Becker from Bread Beckers. Welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. I'm so excited you've joined me today, and I hope this episode encourages you and allows you to find the answers you have been praying for the health of you and your family. Today on Sue's Healthy Minutes, I want to share a very special It's the Bread story. Actually, it's two stories in one. 20 years ago, in 2005, I decided I wanted to do a video recording of my presentation, Only Real Bread is the Staff of Life. At that point in time, I had not done anything like that before. I put together a live event to be recorded and invited several people that I had met over the years to come share their It's the Bread stories. They each responded enthusiastically. It was great to have these stories on record. Recently, while cleaning out some accumulated clutter, I found the written testimonies from 20 years ago of two of my very special guests from that day, Veneda and Geneva Hilton. They had meticulously written out the words they wanted to share. After finding these, I shared with my amazing podcast producer, Tiffany Thompson, who, by the way, is also one of the testimonies from that event, that I just might want to read their stories on this episode today. But Tiffany did better than that. She was able to capture the audio from that 2005 presentation and get their story to share with you today. But before I play their story, I must give you a little background of these two dear friends. And I hope I can do it without crying, as I'm tearing up even now as I prepare their introduction. I first met Veneda and Geneva in 2004, the year before the video presentation event. They were inseparable twins who were starting on their real bread journey at the age of 76 years old after learning of a threatening health concern. We spoke many times over the years and became friends. Veneda and Geneva Hilton were precious friends. They would call me every now and then, and I would call them. They were great prayer warriors during my cancer treatment and came to visit me through that trial each time I was in the hospital. Once even bringing me requested Ezekiel bread to help me regain my strength. I called them my angels, as I believe they were sent by God to strengthen me. In 2020, at the age of 92, after years of living together in Atlanta, having no other family in the Atlanta area, they were encouraged by their family to move to North Carolina, where most of their family lived. I lost touch with them after that, much to my dismay. But in November of last year, I received a call that Geneva had passed away on October 6, 2024, at the age of 96. My heart was broken, but even more for her surviving sister, Veneda. The two had only been separated from each other twice in their lives, but I knew Geneva was with the Lord. As I was preparing for this introduction, for this recording, I was reminded of Geneva's life and her obituary. As I read it again today, I decided I would read it to you all as her introduction, since I don't have her here to tell it for herself, but also to inspire you by her life well lived. Here is what was written about her. Geneva Hilton, born on June 18th, 1928, in Tifton, Georgia, peacefully met her Savior face to face on October 6, 2024, in Raleigh, North Carolina. A devoted servant of Jesus Christ, she spent her life sharing her faith with everyone she encountered. She was quoted in the Tifton, Georgia newspaper as saying she could not ever remember a time where she hadn't planned to be a missionary, and her profession would be her means to an end in helping to bring Christianity to natives in Africa. Upon graduating high school in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, she pursued her education passionately, earning degrees in education, nursing, and tropical medicine from universities in Canada, Belgium, and Africa. Additionally, she obtained dual registered nursing licenses from the state of Georgia and the country of Belgium. Fluent in French and Swahili, Geneva served as a missionary in the Belgian Congo for 7 years. Upon her return to the United States, Geneva and her identical twin, Veneda, who she affectionately referred to as her womb mate, began their nursing careers together at Grady Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. Geneva became an instructor in pediatrics and developed many educational materials for Emory University medical students. Even after her retirement in 2003, she never truly left nursing behind as she continued teaching nursing and cardiac rehab classes. Her joy in life and love of hospitality left a lasting impression on all who knew her. Geneva lived her entire life with her identical twin, Veneda, a shared unbreakable bond that has only been interrupted twice by her time in the Belgian Congo and now in her death. Geneva called her beloved Atlanta home. Wherever they went, they were often greeted with Miss Hilton, as people recognized the inseparable twins. They even gained notoriety at local restaurants where their reputation often secured them immediate seating, a charming testimony to their shared identity. Geneva was known for her gift of playing the piano. She taught herself to play by ear, a passion that brought joy to many. Her kind, humble spirit served as an encouragement to those around her. She was generous and devoted to her large family and multitude of friends. She is survived by her beloved identical twin, Veneda Hilton, and her sister, Luttrell Smith. Her family and friends have been blessed by her legacy of love and cherish each memory with her. Her life was spent serving Jesus Christ and is a testament of her faith and dedication to Him, forever inspiring those around her. In her final years, Geneva was surrounded by all the love a family could provide. I hope as you listen today to the It's the Bread story of Geneva and Veneda Hilton that you are inspired not only by this testimony, but by a life well lived. Until next time, this is Sue Becker from Bread Beckers with Sue's Healthy Minutes. I do want to bring Veneda and Geneva Hilton, my very dear friends, up and let them share with you their testimony. They live in Atlanta in the Buckhead area. They're both registered nurses, and they both have been missionaries. I did not realize how recently you went to the Congo, but Veneda is a former missionary to the Belgian Congo, and these ladies have just been so very precious to me. They encourage me in ways that they would never, ever know. They're identical twin sisters, so I had to tell them I said, now, Kenny, you got to tell me which one's which here, even though I know them. And I felt so good because they said their father never did get them right. So I was like, oh, good. I was embarrassed to even ask it because I felt like you were going to think I didn't love you. And I do just so love them. They have a powerful testimony of totally reversing heart disease, much to the amazement of their doctor. And it's just been very fascinating. Who wants to go first? Veneda, I think you want to go. And Geneva will follow her. I'll just let you come right on up. And Geneva as well is a retired nurse and a medical missionary. I want you to hear the heart of these ladies, though. When they wrote their little script here for me to kind of know something to introduce them by, Veneda, she says, I love the Lord deeply from the bottom of my heart. And then Geneva says, the Lord and His will is the joy of my life. And I think you will hear that as they share their testimony. These two ladies are precious. I pray that you will be blessed as I have been.
I want to thank Sue also for being here today. It's a real joy. And I'd like to say to you in the African language, Bote mingi, nazawa esinga kutalabino nyosa. I'm really glad to be here. I don't know why the Lord didn't let me have just a wart. I mean, not just a wart, but wart. I didn't have asthma. I don't really never have had a big problem with constipation. But the Lord let me have heart disease. And that was a great shock to me. Before I tell you about that, and it is a story of deliverance, I want to read to you a verse of scripture that the Lord gave to me before I ever went to the Congo. This verse is found in Psalm 37:25. I have been young and now am old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. Might sound like a strange verse to you, but it's been very precious to me. David wrote that David was an old man when he wrote this verse, and many Bible scholars say that this was his literal declaration. He had never, in all his whole lifetime, seen a man, whether in affliction or not in affliction. He had never seen a man forsaken by the Lord. And furthermore, he had never seen a man that was forsaken by the Lord by allowing his children to be beggars. I want to tell you today that to me, this verse still is my heartfelt testimony. I have been young and now am older, yet I've never seen the Lord forsaking me in any sense of the word. Not in any way have I ever physically or spiritually been, as you might say, in need of begging, especially begging bread. I shared this verse when I was in the Congo. In fact, I had been in the Congo just 1 or 2 weeks, and I could not even speak the African language yet, so I had an interpreter. And when I shared this verse, I did not know it. But 4 years later, an African man wrote me after I was home and told him how the Lord had used this verse to speak to his life and lead him to the Lord. And so I want to share it with you today as my testimony also, especially in regards to how the Lord has not left me destitute in my need to what I call true bread. The Lord has really met my need. First of all, spiritually, he says, I am the bread of life. He that cometh to me shall never hunger, and he that cometh to me shall never thirst. And God himself is his son, is that bread of life, who gave his life that I might have fullness abundant, spiritual fullness, life everlasting. Second, though, the Lord also knew that I would have physical needs, and one of those needs is bread. You know, he taught his disciples to pray for our daily bread. And I have never known a day when I literally have had to ask, I have ever been without food, but especially bread. And I thank the Lord that he has so provided. I want to share with you, though, a specific time when the Lord did meet my need, I think, in supplying true bread. In 1998, I was suddenly told by the doctors that I needed cardiac bypass surgery. And that was such a blow to me. I'm a nurse. This will be embarrassing. Have I not had a healthy lifestyle and I should have known better? All of these thoughts came. I had never had any chest pain. I had never had any reason to know that I had heart disease. But there it was. The only thing I did have, which was really a big issue, but they told me it was not related to my heart disease, was that I did have 4,000 extra heartbeats. And yet they said that was not related to my heart disease. And they said that even though they wanted to do surgery, that the surgery was not going to change that situation, that it was all a benign situation, had nothing to do with pathology of my heart. Well, that was all strange to me, but after I got over, and the Lord did console me that afternoon, and I, of course, agreed to have the surgery. And then they did it the very next day. I really didn't have much time to think about it. But after that was over, my sister and I, and being twins, they immediately suspected her and began, thinking about doing all sorts of tests for her. But we both decided to meticulously research a good heart-healthy diet. I thought I already knew one, and thought I already was having a good healthy diet. But in the process of doing this, just sort of simultaneously, and this was in 1999, I had my heart surgery in 1998, we heard that my niece she homeschools her children, and she had been to a class, it was Sue's class on bread making, and she had begun to make this bread in her house, and we heard how wonderful and how delicious this bread was. So immediately I thought, this is freshly ground milled wheat, and I'm sure it's going to be heart healthy. And so we began to look into it too. And as the story goes, we attended Sue's class, and we were just very, very enamored with this idea. The bread was just so delicious. I think that was one of the things that really made me want to do it, is because the bread was so delicious. But I also knew it was going to be good for my heart. So we began to make our own bread, and now for 6 years we've been making and eating our own bread. And my sister's going to tell you about how that spread even to our physician, but she'll tell you more about that. Now, almost 6 years later, I really want to share with you how I feel this bread has been the Lord's way of providing true bread for me. All during these 6 years, annually, when I go to the doctor, every year he tells me everything's fine. It's like I haven't had heart disease. This past year, when I went, and this was the 6th year, he told me that my heart function was 100% right, perfect in every parameter. And he said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it. And of course, we shared with them. He also told me, we had shared with him all through the years that we were eating this bread. He also told me that not only was my heart functioning perfectly, but that it was really functioning better than 30% better than other people my age who had never had heart disease. And I just so thank the Lord for this. I also noticed that those extra heartbeats that they said the surgery wouldn't help, that they were going away. And not totally entirely, but it wasn't 4,000 a day. In fact, I never know sometimes that I even have them. And I attribute this to not only the Lord's provision for me, but I also attribute it to the fact that I know scientifically what this bread means. It's amazing to me when we look at, Sue's talked about the vitamin E, and then there's the niacin, all of these things that the heart needs. And I'm very sure that it's probably the greatest prophylaxis that anybody could ever do for themselves to prevent heart disease is to eat this bread. But the Lord has really given me 6 years of just a normal life, and that isn't always the case. I've seen myself and seeing other patients of just a normal life, of normal heart function, and it's just been really wonderful. And then another note that I don't think I've even shared with Sue is I had noticed that I do not have type 2 diabetes or even type 1, but I have noticed that I did have a mild hypoglycemia, to the point that I even mentioned it to my cardiologist. I have noticed, though, they didn't have any answer for me except what they would usually say. But then I began to notice, as I ate this bread, especially in the morning, whether it's pancakes, muffins, whatever it is, that when I eat this bread, my sugar level maintains. I never get that shaky feeling that I used to get. So I really thank the Lord for what He's done to maintain not only my heart health, but my life in general. I can't really tell you how much better I feel. And it's something that's almost just nebulous. You can't really put it into words, but you've just got a better feeling all over when you're not eating white flour and sugar. And I really thank the Lord for this. I'd like to say again with David, only David said that when I am young and now when I'm old. I'd like to say when I was young and now when I'm older. I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread.
Well, the world says twins that are identical do everything just alike. In this instance, I think that the Lord in His mercy let Veneda be a forerunner, and I came along behind, but He brought me through a little different experience than He did Veneda. My medical experience began in 1998 also. Actually, the day after Veneda had her cardiac surgery, I was in a cardiac cath lab. And to make sure that there wasn't anything surprises waiting me that Veneda didn't know she had. Frankly, I think the doctors wanted to be sure. Veneda had two little anomalous arteries, and they wanted to see if identical twins had one too, if I had one too. I think that's part of it. But they did have, I was in the cardiac cath the very next day. Now I have CD and video documentations, and certainly the supported expense based on Medicare and Aetna insurance of the journey that the Lord began in 1988 for me. That was His wonderful way, His precious will for my life, and showed me His omnipotent power in His will. As with Veneda, I too had no symptoms, but being an identical twin, I was ordered the cath, as I mentioned, and the day after her surgery. And though the beginnings of my disease was diagnosed as mild, my disease progressed rather slowly. And over the next 2 years and two cardiac stents later, I found myself in a severe coronary artery circumstance. All my arteries appeared on, I think it was number 4 cardiac cath that I had during that time. All my arteries appeared to be totally occluded. They had what is termed diffuse disease. And that means there was no artery good enough or able to even be bypassed. And that's where I was. The only alternative option I had at that time was to go to Indiana, where a new procedure was being perfected. And they would make tiny multiple holes in your heart to make little bleeders to cause extra vessels to sprout and grow. And it would provide an extra source of blood supply to my heart. There were other procedures similar to that. It could be all offered, but this was the only option truly I had for medical care. A group of 17 physicians conferred regarding my situation. And some of them wanted my local doctor, to continue to just go ahead and try and bypass, because that was the only hope that I seemed to have in their minds. My doctor decided he felt like that maybe there had to be something else. He decided to do a special procedure, which was using a catheter, which is called the IVUS procedure. And it's a little catheter that has a tiny little camera on the end of the catheter. And he took the catheter and inserted it in the artery and ran it up into my heart. And in this, to photograph the actual walls of the arteries. And it would get the width and the depth of the arteries. And he could tell then more exactly the status or what my options for survival really were. And he discovered that I had enough arteries, I had blockage up to a fraction of a millimeter to the borderline when there was nothing that could be done. And this was enough he felt was safe to continue a medical approach to treatment. And therefore he decided to offer me this option. Well, the most unbelievable thing happened. Shortly after that, about 2 days after I was told this, I was at home in the afternoon, and the phone rang, and it was another cardiac surgeon who was not my cardiac doctor, cardiologist who was not my doctor. And he told me he knew about my situation, and he wanted to know if he could offer his personal services to be a doctor for me in between my regular doctor visits, and let me see him once a week, because he feared they did not want something to fall between the cracks. And therefore, he would be willing to offer his services to do this. And that fine Christian doctor did do that. And even to this day, I see him once a week. And no charge, anything. Hope, that little fraction of a millimeter, is hope. Hope is hope, no matter how small it is. And this was the wonderful thing that happened, that sprang within Veneda and me, and then with the help of this fine doctor at our beck and call, so to speak, we were plunged into, we thanked the Lord, and we plunged with praise to the Lord, and began to search in all that we could do and think of for healthy living. And in this time, we read books. We even consulted with Berkeley labs and cardiac labs in California. We consulted with the Cooper Heart Clinic in Ohio. We read library diet books on low fat, and we grained meal and ate bread. And in this time is the time when we came in to meet Sue. And in meeting Sue and Brad, as they can report, every time they announced the class, we were here, and we sitting on the front row. And in that, during that time, the wonderful thing happened. We got to know Dr. Russell and Rex Russell, and I think we attended 3 of his seminars during that period of time. We tried to do everything the doctor said, anybody suggested, anything we did. We fully trusting the Lord. We fully relied upon our cardiologist, Dr. Whitcliffe, and our esteemed medical doctor, Dr. David Watson, and then whom I term my guardian angel doctor, Dr. Jack Dawson. And not the least was our loyal and faithful friends, Sue and Brad, as they became priceless friends, mentor teachers, and godly supportive in nutrition and eating, especially bread baking. In the midst of all this, deep in my heart, I still knew a certain sadness. I did not want heart disease. And I often knew woeful, sort of sad thoughts when I was alone. One night, the Lord so tenderly spoke to my heart. And while reading the scriptures in verses such as Jeremiah 32:17, there is nothing too hard for the Lord, for thee. And the Lord just seemed to ask me, Geneva, do you think I could really change things? And instantly, that sprung up a spark within my heart. If the Lord asked me that, then I said, yes, Lord, I do believe you can change things. And my heart became light with the knowledge that I didn't know if he was. I didn't know if he would. I just knew he could. And that satisfied me enough to know that the Lord was with me, and whatever he said made everything all right. It was at this time then that we continued to eat bread. We continued to meal bread. Our family, everybody, all of our friends thought we'd gone nuts over grain. But we decided we didn't matter. And the thing that I came to know as I continued in this progress with this problem, the thing that I came to know, some of my prescriptions were found in bread. Some of my medical prescriptions, vitamins, folic acid, vitamin E. One of my best friends, cardiologist who I worked with as a worker, not as my care provider, would tell me every day, Geneva, do you eat your vitamin E? Are you eating your folic acid? All of this. And I was astonished to realize, and one of the most dominant medicines ordered now by people already with heart disease is niacin, and in the form of Nystat. And I was just astonished to see that all of this is already in bread. It was already in that little tiny kernel, all packed up, ready to take. Then 2 years later, in 2002, my doctor told me he thought my arteries were stable enough that I could have bypass surgery. So my heart fell. I didn't want bypass surgery, but this seemed to be the path the Lord was leading. Preliminary to a bypass surgery is always a prerequisite cardiac cath that you always have to have the day before. So the cath was scheduled, and I was having the procedure. And as I was lying there, I was watching the screen. I had come 6 caths later to begin to know what a cardiac cath looked like, I thought. And I was watching the screen, and my mind suddenly was perplexed. It appeared to me that as that catheter went up into my artery, into my heart, I could see this, and the dye filled my heart and just floated through all those arteries. It seemed to me that my arterial diagram of my heart was perfect, like a picture in the textbook. And I thought, Geneva, you must really not know what you thought you knew, because this is not the way the doctors are talking. And this is not the way it looked. The doctor completed the procedure, and the staff just sort of gathered around my bed, and that was unusual. And then the doctor just stood there, and he looked at me. He dropped his hands. He was silent. He dropped his hands, and he says, Geneva, there is nothing for me to do. Your arteries are totally clear. He says they have completely reversed. All the staff was silent. There was a strange, I still can relive that moment of silence in that room. All the staff was around my bed. Nobody said a word. Dr. Wycliffe just turned around and walked out. And then I went back to the room. And as I went back to the room, the bypass surgery was canceled for the next day. And then all the staff from everywhere came to my room, and they said, we've never heard of this. We didn't know it could happen. And some of the doctors came in. We've read it in books. We don't see it clinically. We don't see it very often happen. And what I want to say, what did happen? Well, we know that the Lord did it. We also know that, and I didn't fail to mention to you that in that course of those 2 years, Veneda and I was running all over the city of Atlanta walking, I think, trying to walk anywhere and everywhere to do our walking, do our exercise. We did exercise in the morning with the Fuquay Heart Institute. We walked in the evening 3 miles. We did yoga, believe it or not, stretching yoga, and we did stress classes. We did everything anybody told us to do, and anything anybody thought of that might possibly do it. And of course, we prayed and ate bread. And so what really happened, we know that the Lord intervened in his mercy. He proved by his word that query he gave me that night that I believed that he could, and he did. And then we know that everything put together helped, but Veneda and I feel that primarily bread contributed greatly. And we know this because it was the ingredient that we ate that contained all the heart needs, nutrients for the heart. Today in 205, I recently had my annual I have a thallium stress test taken annually, and Dr. Wycliffe was ecstatic. I came out, and I don't know if you know treadmills, but usually people run 6 to 9 minutes. I ran 11 minutes at a 4.2 speed at a 16 elevation. And that's the highest. 20 is the highest you can go. My cardiac output was 64%. That's a teenager's output. 60. And originally, when I started back then, 2 years before, it was 44, my output. So I was glad to see Dr. Wycliffe happy, but he doesn't know how happy I was. Later, I took a loaf of bread to Dr. Wycliffe. And on my next visit, these are the exact words. Geneva, I couldn't love you girls any better, anymore. But if I could, I would if you'd bring me another loaf of bread. So he said, me and my wife wants to get started eating bread. We have sent bread to our pastor, who is 80 plus years old. He sends us word every time back. I've never tasted anything like this before. We've got our family going on bread. 2 of them are making their own bread. And other families want to know, would we make their bread? And then some of our friends come, where did you get this bread? And we just want you to know that in case you don't know about this bread, you better. Someone called recently and asked me if I had a good recipe for low-carb bread. My mind suddenly envisioned that perfect little compacted kernel of wheat bread that was created for the perfect recipe, God's recipe, the staff of life. So I told her, yes, I did. I had a recipe that had equilibrated and measured in minute, detailed accuracy. It was matched in exact proportion in combination to all ingredients needed, and was packaged in its own protective covering to preserve freshness and goodness years without limit. And she had wanted bread with carbs extracted, not knowing the perfect balance of health contained in that tiny little berry. All pre-measured, pre-mixed, pre-packaged. Just add prepared honey by God's emissaries, the bees, and salt comes from God's sea and ocean, and yeast, the wonder of all ingredients, mixed with a little H2O, which is God's liquid provided for our needs. Put it with a little bit of heat. You can make it the sun, you can make it the radiant stove, or you can do a stone. And there you have the perfect loaf of bread, the perfect recipe. And I'd like to end by saying, to me and to Veneda, the ministry of the Bread Beckers is as missionaries to the human health, healthy eating.
Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast has been a presentation by the Bread Beckers Incorporated, located in Woodstock, Georgia. For more information, store hours, and learning opportunities, visit breadbeckers.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Share this with 2 friends who would benefit from this information, and be sure to join us again next week for more of Sue's Healthy Minutes.